Hey guys, it's Hoi from Dynasty. In this video, I want to talk about something more serious. This is going to be a self-defense crash course video. And I'm going to go over exactly from the psychology, the mindset, the preparation, how to actually verbally or physically defend, and how to de-escalate and exit a self-defense situation. This video is geared towards all types of people, all types of abilities, whether you're trained or untrained. I think there's value here for both, but even more, especially for those who are untrained, I think this is basic common knowledge that you need to know. If you have loved ones, if you have people that you care about, you should share this video with them so that they know, because this vital information can save their life one day or save themselves from a traumatic attack. And this is going to be a realistic video. It's not a how to use martial arts to defend yourself video. This is not what this video is about. This is about a realistic scenario on how the average person needs to be approaching self-defense in order to survive and get out alive. The first most important thing you need to take away from this is that self-defense equals situational awareness. If you are not aware of your surroundings and you put yourself into that position of being in danger in the first place, then you've screwed up. You screwed up because you put yourself into a position where the attacker can come at you, or you put yourself into a vulnerable environment or situation where you are now vulnerable to harm. And before I even talk about the different environments and the different situations that you need to be aware of, I'm going to say just right off the top, the number one thing you should be concerned about is running away. A street fight or a self-defense confrontation is not the same as a martial arts fight or a sport fight or a jiu-jitsu match or an MMA fight or anything like that in between. A self-defense scenario has many, many variables, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And things that go wrong often can go wrong very quickly. Okay, to give you some examples, there could be a weapon involved in the fight. There could be multiple attackers involved in the fight. You might slip and injure yourself. You might slip and hurt your hand, and now you can't punch with your hand. You might hit the guy, and you might injure yourself, or you might fall and you hurt your knee and now you can't use your leg. There's all these kinds of things that can happen, and there's no referee to come in and save you. The referee's not going to come in and be like, oh, you got hit in the nuts? Okay, we're going to give you a timeout. We're going to give you a minute to recover. There's no such thing. So when you get damaged in a real fight, you're not going to have a chance to recover. Okay, in a real fight, it is life or death, so you shouldn't play around with your life. So the number one thing, before I even talk about all the situations and what you should be doing if this and this and this happens, number one thing is just to run away, okay? Situational awareness, number one thing, run away. Now let's break that down and talk about what that means. Running away, well, you have to be prepared to run away, okay? This is part of the situational awareness, okay, guys? One, are you wearing comfortable clothing? If you're going out, getting groceries, whatever, hanging out with your friends, going out, maybe it's a night out, you're drinking at the bar or whatever, going clubbing, whatever it is, or you're on vacation and you're taking a trip somewhere, okay, and you get into a bad situation, someone attacks you. Number one thing, running away, you have to wear comfortable clothing, loose, comfortable clothing, nothing too loose, nothing too tight, something that you can run fast away from, okay? Nothing that's just going to drag you down. Number two, comfortable shoes, okay? Sneakers, running shoes, athletic footwear. You should be wearing that as opposed to high heels, sandals, things like that that's going to impede your ability to run away, okay? Those two things are going to count towards if you're going to be able to survive or not. Now we got past the part where we talk about running away. Let's talk about the actual situation and the environment that you find yourself in a self-defense situation, okay? So if you are aware of your scenario, if you are aware of your surroundings, number one, you should assess the risk and the threat, okay? Assessing the risk and the threat. If you see that there is a potential threat, someone walking up to you, or someone saying something, there's a potential risk factor that you know is going to escalate, or potentially someone is walking into your distance, walking into your zone, and is about to assault you or something like that. If you have assessed the situation carefully, one, don't put yourself into that situation. Don't be that close to the other person. If a person has a hand, underneath their shirt, they might be hiding a weapon. They might be hiding something, okay? If one person has a hand behind their back, cocked back, these are all risk factors that you have to assess. That means there's a threat level being engaged. That threat level is going to keep rising, and then until it gets to a certain level where it explodes and the violence actually starts happening, you need to be aware of what level that is at, okay? And you have to be able to judge that for yourself. After you assess the risk and the threat, okay, assess your entry and exit. This has to do with environmental awareness. If you're sitting in a restaurant, if you're sitting in a bar, is your back facing the wall? That means you can't run backwards to escape. That means you have to run forwards potentially to get to an escape. That means you have to shove whoever is in the way in front of you, or potentially just dart past the attacker and get to your potential exit, okay? If your back is the exit, that's slightly better. You're not going to be cornered into a wall or anything like that. You have a potential escape route. But also, another way of looking at it is that if your back is against the wall, that means you have a full, clear view of the entire room or the entire space that you're in. So that could actually be an advantage because you know exactly who's coming in and who's exactly walking out, and you know that, hey, nobody's going to attack you from behind. Assess these kinds of factors and come up with an escape plan before anything happens. The next part of situational awareness is having a buddy system, okay? It doesn't matter if you're going on vacation, you're traveling somewhere, whatever. If you are doing the activity alone, or if you are walking out alone and you're not with anyone, you are much higher percentage, much more likely that you're going to be vulnerable to a self-defense situation like an attack or a robbery or anything like that, because you don't have a friend there to check in on you. It's much easier to target someone that's by themselves versus someone who has a friend. Have a buddy system, okay? Just having that friend taking care of you while you take care of your friend is going to help you avoid many confrontations. So keep that in mind. Next part, you want to do some research on the legal system of where you're living. Some places, some states, provinces, or countries, or whatever, they have different laws, okay? So some places, it is legal to carry firearms. It is legal to carry weapons. If that's the case, carry one and learn how to use it. Learn how to use your firearm. Learn how to use your weapon. Learn how to use your knife. Be competent at that weapon. Be competent at that tool. But if you live in a place where it is illegal to own any of that stuff, it is illegal to carry a gun, to carry a weapon, to carry pepper spray, then there are some ways around it, okay? One thing that you have to do is carry some sort of a makeshift weapon or makeshift object that you can hide, you can carry around with you, such as a keychain, such as like a metal or steel kind of keychain that has sort of like a spike at the end that you can use sort of like as an ice pick if you have to physically defend yourself. Any kind of makeshift weapon, again, the keychain example, or maybe like a belt, something like that, where you know you can use in a self-defense situation that won't actually be illegal. It's kind of like gray area. It's like, well, that was like an everyday object. Then you can kind of argue that when you have to get a lawyer afterwards, okay? But think about carrying these kinds of everyday items. Think about getting some kind of a keychain. Think about getting some kind of small piece of a stick that you can hide somewhere. Something that is not obvious. It might be like an everyday object. Maybe even get a phone case that is made out of aluminum or metal or something like that. Or something that is semi-pointy or solid that you can actually use to strike someone if someone were to attack you. The next thing is actually the mindset. Okay, mindset is also part of the preparation. So you have your situational awareness, and then you have your mindset and preparation. You have the tools and the clothing, but now let's say you can't run away. You are now forced into a situation where, let's say you screwed up, you failed, you put yourself in a dangerous position now where you couldn't run away. You're forced to make a decision. Are you going to submit and let the other person have whatever they want? Or are you going to decide to defend yourself? This is a decision that you have to make because not everybody is the same. Not everybody is equal, okay? One person may be, athletic. He or she can sprint very fast. They can run away. Or maybe they are physically, able to defend themselves. Then that is the path that they will go. And I will talk about what happens when you actually decide to do that. Then there are other people who maybe are physically incapable. Okay, they cannot run fast. They do not have the mindset. They don't have the mindset to switch that switch and defend themselves. So they basically are going to be a victim. And how do you minimize that? So let's talk about that first. So if they are looking for money and you can't defend yourself, they're looking for money, they're looking to steal some valuable of yours, whatever it is. They're threatening you physically, whatever it is. Try to just give that to them, whatever it's cash, credit card, whatever, your belongings, whatever. As long as they get what they want and you're telling them that, hey, just take whatever you want, we're not going to report it to the police. If they have what they want, hopefully by giving them what they want, they will leave. That's the best situation you can hope from that situation, from a helpless situation, right? Because we're assuming you do not have a choice. You cannot run away. You're unable to run away. You don't have an intimidating voice. You cannot scream for help. Those kinds of things, okay? Give them what they want and you can live to fight another day and you can live and you can survive. Once you decide that you're going to defend yourself, you have to make a full commitment to defending yourself. You cannot half-ass your way into it. You cannot half-heartedly do it, okay? Because the situation becomes more dangerous if you decide to defend yourself, but then you're only doing it halfway. You're kind of like, well, I'll hit you once on the head, but then scream because I'm scared of hitting you over the head, or like I hit you over the head and I see blood and all of a sudden I'm scared because I see blood. Like, you can't do that. If you do anything half-heartedly, you're gonna put yourself into harm's way even more because now you've just made them more aggressive. You just aggravated them. You just annoyed them. So now they're gonna come at you twice as hard. You must make sure that you stop your opponent. You do everything in your power, in your ability, that you stop your opponent and your attacker from doing what they want to do. And I will talk about the levels of what it means to stop them. Once you make that decision, you have to go 100%. It's all in or all out. You cannot be in between. Let's talk about verbal self-defense. Verbal self-defense, we're going to have to start with verbal de-escalation first. This is assuming that your attacker is actually, coherent. They're not on drugs. They're not filled with rage. Provided that, you can see all these kinds of things. Obviously, if they come from behind, they attack you, there's no chance. There's no verbal confrontation there. It automatically escalates the physical. But if it is a situation where it is escalating and you have a chance to de-escalate it, then by all means verbally de-escalate first. Now this will depend on person to person, but it generally goes one of two ways. One, you take the verbal de-escalation in a positive way. This might be the smart choice for most people, right? So you let them know like, hey, I don't want to cause any trouble. I agree with you. I don't want any trouble. I don't want to get hurt. I'm just going to walk away now. You give them a verbal warning that like, hey, you don't want any trouble. You're not here to cause a scene. There's no need to escalate into a physical confrontation. You can do what you want. And that's it. So that's kind of like that first scenario where I said, if you're untrained and unathletic, you should take that route. And even if you are trained and if you are athletic, you should probably still take that route because you don't know who the other person is, right? They don't know who you are, but you also don't know who they are, right? They could be a crazy person with nothing to lose. They could be a trained, fighter. They could be just someone very dangerous. They could be, a serial killer or something like that. You don't know. Okay, you just don't know. So it's better off that you talk to them and you verbally de-escalate first as a first choice, okay? The verbal self-defense, the other way that will happen, that will play out, is that you must warn them. You must verbally warn them. Shout, scream, whatever it is that you have to do, right? Call for help, right? Cause a scene, right? All these kinds of things are part of the verbal self-defense. If you can cause a scene or if you can verbally warn them, be like, hey, back off, or any other kind of those variations where you verbally let that person know that, hey, you're not afraid to escalate and physically defend yourself, such as attack him or attack him out of self-defense or hurt him or whatever it is, whatever you want to say to the other person, basically, in order to intimidate that person. Okay, the objective is to get to a level of a verbal warning where you're able to successfully intimidate the other person so that the other person now finds that the consequence of dealing with you is not worth the trouble. Once you're able to reach that threshold, then you hypothetically should be able to successfully defend yourself verbally. Okay, then you have succeeded in what you were able to do, and then you're able to detach from the situation. Okay, but again, they might call your bluff, they might not be intimidated, and then it goes into a physical confrontation. So during the verbal confrontation phase, during the verbal defense phase, again, one of two things can happen, okay? One, either you're really good at persuasion, you're very charismatic, you know how to act very well, and you intimidate them so badly that even though you would have never physically been able to follow up with your self-defense, you're able to verbally intimidate them and get them to back off. But again, I don't recommend that because if they call your bluff on it, you're not going to be able to defend yourself. So I don't recommend that. The other situation is that you can physically defend yourself. You are quite physically capable of defending yourself. You're confident that you can defend yourself. Again, I don't recommend it either, but this is still slightly better than going into a physical fight right from the get-go. You give them a chance to de-escalate. You give them a chance to back off. You tell them, hey, back off. I'm not afraid to defend myself. Say whatever you need to say, right? Like, hey, I'm an MMA fighter. You know, if that's what you have to do and that prevents you from escalating into an all-out fight, then maybe that's what you have to say. Or like, hey, I train jiu-jitsu. Like, you don't want to fight me. Trust me. Like, if that's what you have to say in order to get the person to back down, then say that, right? You should try your best not to aggravate the person or make the other person lose face when you're telling them to verbally back off. Okay, this is a fine balance. Okay, you want to intimidate them and get them to back off, but you don't want to do it so much to the point of they actually want to hurt you more. If you are by yourself and you are in a verbal confrontation with the other person, it may be best for you to have a calm discussion with that person and verbally de-escalate. The situation changes if there are other people around. If there are witnesses around, that actually works in your favor because at that point, you can now escalate verbally to a point where everyone else knows that this situation is happening and you're trying to defend yourself and the other person is in the wrong, and you let everybody actively know that if anything happens, that it's that person's fault, it's not your fault, that you are acting in self-defense. This is another verbal defense strategy, is that you let everyone else know, causing a scene that, hey, if you attack me, you're morally in the wrong, number one, so then they'll feel shame. And number two, they lose face if they attack you because now you just let everyone else know that it is socially unacceptable for whatever that you're about to do. So that's very important in the psychology of the verbal defense. I've had situations in the past where I have actually used that. I was very loud and let everyone know in the surrounding area when I was defending a friend of mine that, hey, this person's in the wrong and don't swing at me. And if you do swing at me, we're not afraid to defend ourselves. So once that person saw that everyone else was witnessing what they were doing wrong, they backed off because it's an embarrassment for them to keep doing what they were doing. And that usually works because when they feel shame or when they feel embarrassment or when they feel morally judged by something, all of a sudden they back away. A bonus, an extra bonus that I'll throw in there. If you are a humorous person, if you like to crack jokes and you are a funny type of person, using humor to de-escalate a situation is also very important. It also works really well because you are reframing a potential dangerous and aggressive situation. You're reframing that situation into one that is you guys having a discussion or a laugh about something. If the attacker finds you funny, or the attacker finds something hilarious, whatever you say, whatever situation, whatever joke that you tell in that situation that takes the aggression away from the aggressor, then they will find that they have no reason for them to attack you anymore because they're not mad at you anymore, or they're not pissed off at you anymore, or maybe they decide that they don't want to hurt you anymore, or they decide that they don't want to rob you anymore because you're actually quite a funny person or a funny guy or girl, and you've diffused the situation through humor. I've also seen that also work. So now let's talk about the actual physical confrontation, okay? Imagine that everything else has failed, okay? You put yourself into a dangerous situation, your situational awareness failed, you were not able to verbally de-escalate or intimidate or warn the other person, you weren't able to negotiate with them, or they are not in the state of mind to negotiate, they're not in the state of mind to listen to whatever you have to say, and they are acting out of pure hatred, so then they attack you, either from behind or in front, doesn't matter. The physical assault happens. Now is where the mindset kicks in, okay? You have to have the mindset and no hesitation to defend yourself right away. And when you do physically defend yourself right away, if you are trained, do what you need to do as a trained martial artist, beat the other guy up, throw him, trip him down on the floor, either knock him out or put him in a submission hold and hold him down, and then you're done with it, okay? But if you're untrained, okay, here's what you have to keep in mind is that if you're untrained, you have to attack until the other person stops. Because the other person's not going to stop if you show any signs of weakness or if you stop whatever you're doing. The other person's just going to take over and they're going to attack you. You're always going to assume that the person attacking you is stronger than you, bigger than you, faster than you, whatever. So as a self-defense, situation, if you're an untrained person, or even if you are a trained person, you still want everything stacked in your favor, right? Because you want to survive, you want to get out alive. So you have to find the equalizer or you have to find the multiplier, okay? And what that means is the things that I mentioned before, okay? Having some type of keychain, okay? Some type of steel object in your hand, okay? Or using keys, right? And putting the keys in between your fingers, okay? If you're a woman, using your nails, right? And you just have to fight dirty. You have to fight the dirtiest way possible, okay? Stab them in the eyes, stab them in the throat, hit them in the temple, hit them in the throat, okay? Hit them in the groin, grab them by the groin, anything that you can do. Grab them by the hair, bite them on the ear. Every single dirty thing that you can possibly come up with, you must do that. It is absolutely imperative that you do that, and you do that from 0 to 100. You must do it right away, because once you give up the opportunity, the element of surprise, okay, that's the other thing too, is you must attack first. Don't wait until the other person's attacked you first. You must be the one that attacks first. The element of surprise is everything. It's either you win the fight or they win the fight, okay? So number one thing is always attack first and attack fast. And in terms of intensity level, you got to go from 0 to 100. You can't stop in the middle. You can't go 50 and then check up on your opponent and be like, well, are you okay? Like, I just bit your ear off. Are you okay? No. You have to continue until the other person is either stopping what they're doing or they verbally submit it to you. Now we're going to talk about how the self-defense situation ends, how the fight ends, okay? Either the person has verbally submitted or they have physically submitted, okay? So let's talk about that. Verbally submitted is maybe they tell you, stop, I give up, or they walk away or they run away, okay? That's kind of like verbal submission or body language submission. The second way is physical submission, as in, let's say you damaged him so much that you knocked them out and they are unconscious and they're lying on the floor. Maintain control of that situation, okay? As you're calling the police, or maybe you should run away, right? Run away first and just survive. You don't have to call the police. Or if you are in a situation where you have to call the police because something happened, then you maintain control of the situation and you call the police, okay? Or in some cases, don't call the police because they might actually charge you. So that's a situation that you're gonna have to keep in mind. You're gonna have to judge on your own, okay? But you always wanna maintain control of the situation. If they're knocked out, they might get back up and hurt you again, right? Or if you put them in a submission hold and maybe you're choking them up, they might get up and retaliate. There's a verbal submission, and then you have to enforce that they're gonna verbally comply. There's gonna be a compliance. So you're gonna have to tell them, okay, now the fight's over, but if you get up and attack me, I'm gonna have to knock him out again. Or you're gonna have to break his arm. Or you're gonna have to rip his knee out. Or you're gonna have to, whatever, break his ankle. Whatever it is, you have to verbally tell that person that. And if they step over the line, you maintain control and you actually have to act upon what you're doing, because the other person is not going to get the message if you don't maintain control. So if you have a chokehold or whatever, you might have to actually choke him out, or you might have to actually break his arm so that he stops attacking you. So two ways, either verbally he submits, or physically he is incapacitated so he cannot attack you anymore. These are the two ways that you will know the self-defense situation is over and you maintain control. But always prepare to continue to that control because it might go back into a physical confrontation. So this goes back to our verbal de-escalation. After the fight's over, you have to then verbally de-escalate and make sure that he's not going to attack you anymore. Some final thoughts to wrap everything up, okay? If you're running away and you can't defend yourself, always try and get something in between you and your attacker, okay? Whether it's debris, whether it's a physical object, whether it's a desk, whether it's a flight of stairs, okay? Anything that turns a situation into a one-on-one fight, especially for multiple attackers, anything that turns a situation into a one-on-one fight, or if you can lock yourself up in a car or lock yourself up in a room, then do that. That will avoid you getting hurt, you getting assaulted, then do that. And eventually, hopefully, they will leave because they can't get to you. And even if you can physically defend yourself, don't, because it's just not smart. You don't know who they are. A bunch of things could go wrong. They could have friends, they could have buddies, they could have weapons. You might get injured. It's just not a good situation. Run away as much as you can. And it goes back to, the situational awareness, right? Situational awareness is your number one self-defense. That's your friend. Now, besides all that, if you have to defend yourself, just know that sometimes even cheap shots and fighting dirty won't help. Sometimes that person could be very tough. That person could be on drugs. That person could be whatever. That might still fail you, even if you do all kinds of cheap shots. So the very, very, very last resort is you actually have to learn some type of martial art. You actually have to become somewhat competent at fighting. You have to be at least, with average fight level skills, right? Above the average untrained person. Because even an untrained person, if they're athletic and they're aggressive and they're out of control, they could beat you even if you're a trained person. So you have to be an above average fighter or an above average martial artist in order for you to reliably defend yourself in a fighting scenario, because you have to assume that even self-defense type of tactics like eye gouging, ear biting, throat punching, groin kicking, all those kinds of things, that they could fail you because that person might be running on adrenaline, or they might just be really aggressive and tough, and they will take those kinds of shots and still try and do whatever that they are trying to do to you, either punch you or grapple you, or any kind of physical or sexual assault. So at some point, if all else fails, just know that not even doing self-defense might save you, okay? You actually have to be a competent fighter, which is also why I don't recommend people going to train a self-defense or a reality-based martial art, because this is a topic that deserves its own video, but I'm just going to touch on it very briefly here, is that oftentimes reality-based martial arts are not really reality, because you are training all these scenarios that hypothetically could happen, but in a real scenario, anything can happen. So at that point, you just need to be a good fighter. You need to be able to get yourself out of all these situations in an organic way that only you can do as an individual. So you need to know some form of striking, you need to know some form of grappling, and you need to know some form of self-defense learning. So, which is why you should just train martial arts. And you should train weapons, you should train firearms, so that you have a well-rounded skill set, and hopefully you can get out unharmed and alive. Hopefully you found this video educational, of value. If I missed anything, or if you have any more questions, right, comment down below and I will try my best to answer them all. Thank you, and stay safe.